So I know one of the other things that you guys do on the farm, it's not strictly just dirt therapy. You also do, it's fair to say, regular therapy with, I had to look up on your website because it seems pretty particular, but it's peer support training.
Yes.
Can you expand on what that is?
So peer support training, what we have to offer is just, it's training in how to be an active listener to somebody that's in a state of crisis, but then it's also gives you the skills to validate that person. They might come to you venting or ranting, trying to get something off their chest. And rather than you maybe having a knee-jerk reaction and responding, it trains you to, okay, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to hold space for this person, and I'm going to let them, get what they need to out, but I'm going to validate how they're feeling. Like, this sounds hard. This is difficult. Please tell me more. Then, oh man, I'm sorry you're going through that. And then you can show some empathy of like, just an instance like, my grandmother passed away too, or something like that. So you can connect with them. So it's just about active listening, validation, showing empathy. Because sometimes if you have that knee-jerk reaction, that person is going to shut down and then they're not going to open up. And so that peer support training gives our staff, gives our regular volunteers and our board members those skills. So when veterans show up, and it doesn't even have to be a veteran, sometimes it's volunteers that show up on our farm and they're in a state of crisis. They need a safe, warm place to land. Because if you have those knee-jerk reactions and you say something silly like, oh, get over it, tough it out, stuff like that, that's going to just push them back into isolation. And so peer support, it can help you professionally, it can help you personally. And this is something that we were doing. We've done it quarterly before. We wanted to try to get to a place where we're doing it every other month, so 6 times a year. And unfortunately, some of the funding that we had for our peer support training, we recently lost. And so we're trying to reacquire some of that funding from somewhere else so we can continue to offer our peer support training on at least a quarterly basis.
So the peer support training isn't something that's specifically for the veterans that are coming to Growing Veterans. It's for the support structure around the veterans.
But it also can be for those volunteering because it is like a level 1, user level 1 kind of skill. You don't have to have a degree in something. You don't have to be like a counselor. It's really just person to person. And it's something that it is so important in our communities and our society to be able to listen to someone and actively hear what they're saying and understand what they're saying and then finding that common ground. It's all about human connection more than anything.
Do you find that is, so like coming back to a bit of a macro view to Growing Veterans, because you have the dirt therapy, but is the critical piece that makes it work the fact that people are in community together, these veterans?
Absolutely. In a short sense, we're there to connect, grow, and heal. And when you make those connections, that's how the community starts growing. And I can tell you, my first time I went out to Growing Veterans as a volunteer, I was just looking for connection. I was looking for community. And then I volunteered here and there for about 5 years. And then when, unfortunately, my teaching career came to an end, and it was, I was struggling with some of my own mental health, some moral injury that I didn't quite deal with correctly, and I was kind of suppressing because I was a special education teacher working with students with emotional and behavioral disabilities. So I had students who were actively living throughout their childhood trauma, and then they're coming to my classroom, and I'm trying to work with them while their on-process trauma's coming out in my classroom. Mine was bubbling up. And so unfortunately, it just worked out where, I just kind of resigned and made my peace that my teaching career was over. But then I had lost my sense of purpose and my sense of belonging. And one day I came back out to the farm, and this time I knew what the farm had to offer, right? And I was that veteran that came out there kind of in a sense of crisis. I've lost my purpose. I've lost my belonging. I reached out to people for help that I worked with, and it seemed like they weren't interested in helping a veteran going through this type of crisis. I think they were worried about what does happen if a veteran, has an episode or has a tough time. And that was really hard for me, because it was like, I started thinking, were they thinking that I would hurt someone? Because here's the sad part, Cole, is most veterans who run into that type of situation, there's only one person they end up hurting, and that's themselves. And so I got to come out that spring in a sense of crisis to the farm. And I instantly had 5-6 veterans who had all been to that peer support training, right? There to listen to the tough times I was having, to validate my frustration, my confusion, my sadness, my displacement. And then they showed me empathy, and I started coming out to the farm then weekly, which then turned into, me becoming employed by the farm, 6 months later.
Only 6 months.
Yeah.
And that must have been an eventful 6 months.
It was. And it was great because I wasn't working. I was just volunteering at the farm, and I was spending a lot of time with my son, who wasn't even a year old at that time. So, I finally had a kind of a chance to stand back and just kind of have growing veterans to lean on as I was going through my healing journey and trying to figure out what am I going to do next? What's my next purpose, and what's my, where am I going to belong to? Little did I know that, growing veterans was going to be the place for me.